Good morning. Hope you're having a great week. Is it Monday or Tuesday? No, it's Wednesday. Oh my God, I'm losing track of time here. Wednesday, July 19th, 11:29 a.m. Central Daylight Time, local time here in Oklahoma City. I am back at home and I am going through a range of emotions right now. I don't even know where to start. I'm sweating profusely right now. I'm sweating really bad. I think my camera is not good enough. This isn't in like 8K, so you can't see like the sweat pouring down off my head. Um, I'm sweating really bad because I've been on the phone all morning since 7 a.m. I've basically been on the phone for 4.5 hours. And when I'm on the phone, I pace. I can't sit still when I'm on the phone. So I've just been walking around the house for 4.5 hours on the phone. So before we start talking about all the drama, and there's like a whole bunch of bad and some good and some ugly. Before we talk about that, let's get caught up on the normal trucker vlog stuff. What happened since the last video? Last video, I just finished doing a random drug test and I was headed over to the truck stop. So, to give a synopsis of what happened for people who don't watch every single video I upload, I've been sitting at home for almost 4 months and I contacted Landstar to get a trailer because I didn't have a trailer because I was going to go back out over the road. You know, the rates suck. That's the reason I was sitting at home for 4 months. But I can't sit at home forever. So I was like, you know what? Let's get back out here and see if we can't make a little bit of money in this bad freight market. So I requested a trailer. They needed a trailer moved. So they gave me that trailer instead of the closest trailer. And that was 200 miles away in Arkansas. And an hour after I picked up the trailer, Landstar called me and told me I'd been selected for a random drug test. So I had to drive from Mulberry, Arkansas to Fort Smith, Arkansas to do a drug test. And then I uploaded that video when I was on my way from the drug test to the truck stop. I got to the truck stop Wednesday afternoon and I sat there looking for a load. Couldn't find one Wednesday, couldn't find one Thursday, couldn't find one Friday. I sat through the weekend at the truck stop, couldn't find one Monday. And 3 o'clock in the afternoon Monday, I was like, you know what? I'm only 200 miles from home. Who knows how long it's going to take me to find a decent load? I'm going to go home and sit and wait for a load. So I drove home Monday night. And then yesterday, at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I got a call from Landstar, and that's what started all of this drama. That phone call was not drama. That was no issues with that phone call, but it's what started all the drama. Got a call, and it was when you set for a really long time, Landstar calls and checks up on you. And if you set for a really, really long time, like 4 months, then they start like asking when you're going to pay them all the money you owe them from all the insurance payments they've been making on your behalf. So that's what this phone call was them wanting to know what's going on. And I was asleep when they called. I woke up at 5 p.m. So they were already closed. I couldn't call them back. So I had to wait until this morning to call them back. But they said something in the phone call that triggered all this drama. And that was that I owed them $7,500. I was $7,500 in arrears. And I was sitting there thinking, there's no way. Like, did my insurance prices go up dramatically or something? So I immediately went in and started looking at my settlements, and I was like, no, my insurance is still, no, none of my, no, everything's exactly the same. Nothing's changed. I should owe no more than $3,000 for setting for 4 months, somewhere around $2,500 to $3,000. So I started looking through all my settlements to figure out like where all this extra money came from, and I found it. May 16th, I was charged back on a load for almost $5,000. One of the most expensive loads I've ever hauled was charged back on me. And I was like, what? I started looking through all the loads I've done, and I couldn't even find that load. And I was like, this has got to be somebody else's load or something. But I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't call anybody because it was after 5 p.m. So I had to wait until this morning. And at 7 a.m., I started calling everybody. I called the agent, and the agent pulled up the load, and they're like, I don't know what the problem is. Everything looks good. Like, we approved the load. We got paid for the load. Like, everything's good on the load. And they said to call Landstar. So I called Landstar, and Landstar said that accounts receivable voided it because the customer said it was a double billed load. They said that what it was it was a round trip load. I hauled a load for like $8,000. That's what I actually got paid. The load paid like 10 grand, 10 or $11,000 or something. These stupid amounts of money. This was back at the peak of the freight market, and this was a just-in-time automotive load. So stupid, crazy, one of the most expensive loads I've ever hauled as far as rate per mile and stuff like that goes. But it was a load from Laredo, Texas to Chattanooga, Tennessee, somewhere around 1,000 miles, and it paid me like $8,000. And then it had a return trip from Chattanooga back to Laredo that paid like $5,000. So all in all, I got paid like $13,000 to do a 2,000-mile round trip load. Crazy good money. But the customer claimed that it wasn't two loads. It was the same load double billed. So they refused to pay for the return load, the second part of the second load basically. And that's what they charged back on me. And that's what, BCO settlements told me. And they said that I needed to talk with the agent about it. So I called the agent back and told the agent what BCO settlements told me. And the agent said, I'm going to need to research this. I'll call you back later. So I called Landstar back and got a hold of, I had to wait until 8 a.m. for the driver advisor that had called me the previous day to come into the office. So right at 8 a.m. I called and I got a hold of Sonia and, told her what my status was and everything like that, and got all that cleared up. And then I said, I'm dealing with a bunch of drama over that $7,500 that I owe. And she said, yeah, that's a lot of money. And I was like, yeah, I shouldn't owe that much. And whenever you said that in the voicemail, I went back and looked to try to figure out why I owe that much. And I explained to Sonia what was going on. And I said, I should not be charged back for a customer non-payment. My contract with Landstar states that Landstar will pay me within 15 days of a load delivered. If a customer refuses to pay, I shouldn't be involved in that. I shouldn't be charged back. That's between Landstar and the customer. Landstar has to eat that loss, not me. I should never even know that a customer doesn't pay, let alone be charged back on a load that they refuse to pay for. And the driver advisor was just like, yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I don't know anything about the contract. You need to talk with contractor services about that. She said, I can transfer you. So she transferred me, and she ended up transferring me back to the same BCO settlements department that I'd already talked to. And I got a hold of the exact same person I already talked to. And he was like, yeah, you just need to talk with that agent. And I was like, no. Okay, here's the deal. Forget about that part of the issue. And I explained to him the other part of the issue. I was like, I should not be involved in this. This chargeback should have never happened. Whatever is taking place here is between you and the customer. I shouldn't be involved in this. I want my money back, and I need to talk with somebody that can give me my money back, and then you guys can figure out the non-payment issue. This should have never been charged back to me. You are in breach of contract right now. And he was like, yeah, you just need to talk to the agent. And I was like, Curtis, we're just going in circles here. Do you have a manager I can talk with? You could tell Curtis hated his job and probably his life. You know, he was just like huffing and puffing and just like was pissed off that he had to talk to somebody on the phone. So, which is apparently the motherfucker's job. But anyway, he said that he tried to transfer me to a supervisor and one wasn't available. So he said that he would have somebody call me back. Like 3 hours went by, and during that time, I called the agent back to try to get a status update, and they were in a meeting, and I wasn't able to talk with them. Um, and finally, after almost 3 hours, um, no, it was like 2 hours because in between me talking with Curtis, then I talked with the agent again, and then I called accounts receivable over at Landstar because BCO settlements told me that accounts receivables are the ones that actually put the chargeback on me. They're the ones that actually did it. So I called accounts receivable, which accounts receivable doesn't normally talk directly with BCOs. Accounts receivables talks with the agents and the customers. They don't really interact with BCOs, the drivers. But I called them up to try to get this resolved, and I got a hold of somebody, and she transferred me to a supervisor. I talked with the supervisor, Leslie, and I explained to Leslie what was going on. I explained to Leslie, I said, forget about all the other stuff. I should not even be having this conversation right now. This is a breach of contract. My contract, and what I already explained to you, I explained to her. I said, my contract states that Landstar pays me within 15 days. If a customer refuses to pay for a load, I should never even know about that. I shouldn't be in this situation. You and I shouldn't be talking. I shouldn't have been involved in this. I shouldn't even know about this. What I'm trying to get resolved with you right now is just to get my money back, and then you guys, and then just give me my money back, and then I can get just dropped completely out of this conversation, and you and the agent and the customer can all figure this stuff out because I shouldn't be involved in this conversation. And she said, yeah, I understand. You're right. You're right. And I said, and that's the thing is that, like, I've talked with BCO settlements and they understand that, but they can't do anything about it. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to reach someone that can't just tell me, yeah, I understand and you're right. I'm trying to reach someone that can actually do something to make that happen. And she said, yeah, let me call the agent. And there was a lot more to the conversation than just that. She verified a whole bunch of stuff with the load, asked me a whole bunch of information and stuff like that, and they no longer had copies of, like, the freight bills. I don't know why. I still have transflow receipts showing that I uploaded the freight bills. I scanned them and sent them in, but, like, transflow does not keep those documents on record. They only keep them on record for a couple weeks. I show, if I go to Transflow's website, like, it shows that I scanned in one of the documents on December 23rd, 2021, and it shows that they cleaned up the documents on January 6th, which is only like a couple of weeks. So Transflow only kept the documents for a couple of weeks, and then they deleted them. And apparently Landstar didn't keep any records of the documents. And I didn't keep hard copies for 2 years. So I don't even know if they're going to be able to recoup their money from the customer. And I told Leslie, the supervisor over in accounts receivable, I said, this is a process that could take weeks or months. And I just want you guys to give me my money back and let me not be involved in this. You guys can figure this out. I should have never even been involved in this. I just want my money back, and I just want to disappear. And you guys can, figure out this problem. And there's a whole lot more to the conversation, verifying information and making sure that there actually was two loads and stuff like that. And I explained to her, like what happened. And there's a lot more to the conversation than just that. I explained every little detail about the load. And anyway, she said, okay, well, let me contact the agent and get on the same page with the agent and see what's going on with the agent. And I'll give you a call back. So she called the agent, and then right after I got off the phone with her, I finally got a call back from the manager over in BCO Settlements. And the manager in BCO Settlements basically told me that she really upset me at the very beginning of the call because she didn't even take the time to research what was going on. She just immediately just started dismissing me. And she was like, this is a rate issue between you and the agent, and you just need to deal with the agent. And I said, this has nothing to do with the rates. This is a customer refusal to pay. And this is a $5,000 load that the customer refused to pay on, and I got charged back on it. And she's like, what? And after that, then she actually, I explained to her what was going on, and her attitude completely changed. But immediately when she first got on with me, she was just very dismissive and thought that I was just somebody bitching about a rate change on a load. And sorry, I got a load alert. I need to turn those off, which we're going to get into some good news in a minute on why I don't need to look for a load. So, where were we at? Yeah, I explained to her that I just got off the phone with Leslie, a supervisor in accounts receivable. And she said, well, that's actually who you need to be talking to. That's the only department that can really do anything about this. She said, we can't really do anything in BCO settlements. We can try to see what the problem is and then reach out to other departments like accounts receivable to get it resolved. But we can't actually fix anything directly at BCO settlements. So if you're already in contact with a supervisor in accounts receivable, then that's who you should work with. And I said, okay, cool. But she said that she would, get in touch with Leslie in accounts receivable, and the two of them would, team up on this. And, she would reach back out to me with a status update. Once she got in touch with Leslie and, the two of them talked about it and figured out, what was going on and what we were going to do to resolve it. Because I explained to her that, the main thing I want to happen here is I just want my money back, and you guys can figure out the billing issue, because the non-payment issue should not involve me. It's what I already explained to you guys multiple times. I don't even want to talk about, trying to recover money from this customer. That's not part of, that's not what I do. In this business partnership that I have with Landstar, one of the reasons that I choose to lease to Landstar is because I'm guaranteed payment for every load that I haul. I don't have to worry about a customer not paying. That's part of the contract. If I had my own authority, I would have to worry about whether or not a customer paid me. Even if you go through a factoring agency, if the factoring company doesn't get paid by the customer, then the factoring company is going to charge you back. All the factoring company does is front you the money early for a percentage of it. They take a 2% cut or a 3% cut or whatever for paying you up front, and then they charge the customer. But if the customer refuses to pay the factoring company, then the factoring company charges you back for all that money. So, if I had my own authority, I would have to deal with customer non-payment issues. But one of the reasons that Landstar takes a big cut out of the, the money that I get paid is because they are the ones that have to eat it if a customer doesn't pay. I get paid regardless. But anyway, we're going to wrap this up. Leslie, the supervisor in accounts receivable, called me back right after I got off the phone with the manager in BCO settlements. And she told me that the agency is going to pay me back. They talked with um, accounts receivable, talked with the agent, and the agent said that they were going to pay me directly, and they got the exact amounts of what I was owed. Accounts receivable gave them the exact amounts, and the agent said that they're going to pay me the money that I was charged back. And I told Leslie, I was like, man, that sucks. The customer's not going to end up paying me. The agency's going to eat this loss. And they were like, yeah, the agent's just going to pay you. Apparently the agent screwed up on the paperwork, and Landstar doesn't think they're going to be able to get their money back from the customer because of the way that the agents filled out the paperwork. What happened was, and I think I already explained what, how the load went. Like I booked a load from Laredo to Chattanooga, and on my way to Chattanooga, after I'd already picked up the load and everything, I'm halfway to Chattanooga, and the agent called me up and said, hey, the customer wants to know if you want to do a return trip back to Laredo. And I was like, yeah, definitely, that'd be awesome. Like, what's the rate per mile? Are they going to pay me the same rate per mile that I'm going up there at? And they were like, well, generally they pay 70% on on additional legs on a load. And I was like, yeah, that'll work, because they were already paying stupid amounts of money on this load. It was like $10 a mile, $9 a mile, something really high. So even 70% was like $6 or $7 a mile. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. So what they screwed up on was they just took the original freight bill from my Laredo to Chattanooga load, copied it, and put a new freight bill number on it, and then put in the new amounts. They didn't change the pickup and destination addresses, so it looked like another load going from Laredo to Chattanooga. They didn't change it to say Chattanooga to Laredo. And that's where they screwed up. And that's the reason the customer refused to pay, was because of that technicality. So it sounds like Landstar is laying the blame on the agent, and the agent is having to eat this loss. And the agent is going to pay me out of their own pocket. So I feel bad for the agency for having to eat a $5,000 loss. It pisses me off that the customer, because the customer was not the actual end customer. The customer was a brokerage. So they got paid the full amount on this load, and then they did not pay Landstar. So they got paid, double paid on this load. Like, they got paid a tremendous amount of money on this load because they charged the customer for this load. They got paid on this load, but they didn't pay Landstar. So they got to pocket the whole load. Instead of taking like a 10 or 15% cut on the load, they got the entire amount for the load, 100%, because they didn't pay Landstar on a technicality. Tremendous amount of drama. I should not have been involved in it at all, but it is hopefully resolved. I'm not going to be certain it's resolved until I actually see my next settlement and see that, I've got my money back. But as of right now, I've been told that it was resolved. So that is my big emotional roller coaster. Now let's get over to the good news. The good news is that I've got a dedicated run that's paying really well. Well, in relative terms. Talking about, how bad this freight market is and how bad the loads are paying right now, this thing pays really well. So, in my opinion, and that's all this is, I'm not, basing this off of some data analysis. This is just off my feels, my gut feeling here. From what I've seen on the load board, the average loads right now are paying somewhere around $2 a mile on the full rate. And in my opinion, The operating cost of most trucks is around $250 a mile. So if you, and I've talked about this before, if you have a fleet, if you are a medium sized carrier or larger, your operating cost is most likely somewhere in the ballpark of $250 a mile, because you have a sales department, a marketing department, a maintenance department, a training department, a safety department, an accounting department. You have tons of terminals and properties that you have to pay and maintain and all this stuff. So you have really high operating costs because of all of that support personnel and all that stuff. Owner operators, single truck operations, are much more efficient. They don't have all of the extra expenses. So their operating cost is usually about 30% lower than a large carrier. So a large carrier operating cost $250 a mile, owner operator operating cost around $1.75 a mile. That's taking almost everything into consideration. You can't do unexpected expenses. You can't plan a $50,000 breakdown. That you just can't. You just have to save money for that shit. You can't track that in mileage. So, factoring in paying the driver a decent wage of 60 cents a mile, and then your fuel cost and all that stuff. Because even if you're an owner operator, you still have to pay the driver. How else are you going to pay for your food and your house and your car and all your personal expenses? So operating costs for most owner operators, somewhere in the ballpark of $1.75 a mile, whenever they take into consideration paying themselves. Operating costs for places like, Swift, Knight, stuff like that, around $250 a mile. Somewhere in that ballpark. I don't know. Some of them are really cheap on the driver pay. They might have slightly lower than $250 a mile. But anyway, average rates right now, from what I'm seeing, are around $2 a mile. You can find loads that are paying $3 a mile or more, but they're going to terrible places, and there's drama with them. There's lots of reasons why they're paying so high. They're going out in the middle of nowhere. They're max weight. They're hazmat. They have 15 stops on them. Stuff like that. Most of the normal loads, right around $2 a mile. If you're not trying real hard to find a load using load alerts and stuff like that, and if you're just going and pulling up the load board and just calling and booking whatever's there, right around $2 a mile. Now, if you're patient, you can get loads that are paying $250 to $280 a mile on the full rate, somewhere in that area. That's where the freight market is at right now, from what I've seen. So the good people that are, that know how to use load alerts and, stuff like that, they watch the load board, they understand the markets, and, they're getting decent rates. They're hauling the loads up in the $250 to $3 a mile range on the full rate. And, they're getting their 70% cut or whatever off of it. The load that I booked today, that's dedicated, is the way that they're breaking out the pay. Let me just give you the equivalent. It is there's a second here. It's the equivalent of a load that's paying $3.18 a mile. But the way it's broken out is I get a much higher cut than 65%. And that makes it, the load is actually paying quite a bit less than $3.17 a mile on the full rate. but I'm getting a much larger percentage of it, which makes it the equivalent of a load that's paying around $3.18 a mile. If you're able to book loads that are paying $3.18 a mile right now on the full rate, what the customer's paying, which if you're getting 70%, that's the equivalent of loads that are paying $2.22 a mile. So if you're hauling loads off the spot market, you have your own authority, you're getting 100% of the load, or you think you're getting 100% of the load, that broker is taking a huge cut. You have no idea what percentage you're getting if you don't have direct customers with your own authority. Um, all these owner operators out there with their own authority, they're like, you're an idiot to sign on to somebody for a 65% cut. I get 100%. No, you fucking don't. You're dumb as shit if you think you're getting 100% of the load running spot market loads. So, yeah, the load pays extremely well. It's the equivalent of a load that pays 222 a mile posted on the spot market. Or, if you're looking at the full rate of the load, it's a load that pays the equivalent around 318 a mile. To get something that pays that well in this market, that is amazing. I would love to have that load just on a one-off load, just like one single load. But it's a dedicated run, Monday through Friday, weekends off. So I'm not really thrilled about the weekends off thing, but it's a dedicated run close to my house. I don't want to give too many details about it because I don't want other owner operators at Landstar to jump in on it because we're all in competition with each other. If I find some really awesome load and I go out and I tell every other Landstar driver about it, I'm never going to be able to run that load again. That's the way shit works. We're all in competition with each other. And if I tell people about a really good thing, they're going to come in and push me out of it. But this is an amazing load. The only negative, the agent told me that the miles are not very high on it. He said that most drivers are making about $3,500 gross to the truck per week on this load because the mileage is not very high. So, I think, yeah, that's the equivalent of about 1,500, 1,576 miles per week. So they're averaging about 1,600 miles per week. So it's not a big mileage run. It's a really low mileage run. Um, so that does kind of suck. But it has a minimum on it. And the more details I give about this, people that know what I'm talking about, they're going to know what load I'm talking about. It has an $800 a day minimum. So no matter what, I'm going to get $800 a day. So 5 days, I'm going to get a minimum of $4,000 per week. So I don't know if that's going to be, I don't know what percentage that's going to be at. I don't know. Hopefully we don't come to that. But yeah, we just got to get 1,600 miles a week to get that $3,500. I'm not going to be too thrilled about grossing $3,500 a week because you're looking at probably, well, it's about 1,200 miles per tank, and that's not even really considering idling the truck. That's when my APU is working. It's about 1,200 miles per tank. With me idling the truck, it's going to be a lot more fuel cost. So I might only be able to get like 1,000 miles per tank, if that. Um, and a tank is 200 gallons, and fuel costs somewhere in the ballpark of like Well, it depends on what region you're running in. And if I'm running only in the Oklahoma, Texas area, fuel cost is pretty cheap in this area in comparison to the rest of the country. My fuel cost somewhere in the $3.20 area. So, why can I not do this math in my head? Well, it probably has something to do with me being awake since 5 p.m. yesterday. 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. was 12 hours plus 7 hours. I've been awake for over 19 hours right now. I'm having trouble doing math in my head. So that would be 60% of 200. Why can I not do that in my head? Is that 120? Yes, it's 120. So that would be 320 gallons. So 320 times 3.2, $1,024 per week in fuel cost. So if I run 1,600 miles a week, I'll be grossing 3,500 and have $1,000 in fuel costs. So I'll only be bringing home about $2,500, and I still have other expenses on top of that. I have, my insurance and all my fixed costs and stuff like that. That's just my fuel costs coming out of it. So I would, my expenses aren't too terribly high, but I'd be making like 2,300, 2,400 a week, something like that after all my expenses. If I had a truck payment and I had higher expenses, it would not be pretty. Even at 2,300 a week, like that's just decent company. Well, not decent. That's on the higher end of company driver pay, but it's still company driver pay. Not too thrilled about it. But hey, in this freight market, I'll be happy with it. I'll be happy with it. I don't think I'm going to be getting rich on this load, but it'll be nice to have a dedicated run. And something I've been thinking about, switch gears here and talk about something else. And if you have any thoughts on this, feel free to share because I'm trying to figure out what in the hell to do on the APU situation. The APU situation is this. My APU has had problems from day one of owning the truck. I have dumped probably $40,000 or more into the APU that I currently have. If I would have known I was going to dump this much money into it to start, I would have just bought a brand new APU when I bought the truck. But every time something breaks, I'm like, well, after I get this fixed, hopefully it'll run great. And then it breaks something else. I haven't had the APU run without issue for more than a couple of weeks or a month or so, the whole time I've owned it. And currently, it has multiple issues, and I'm not sure what exactly the problem is. A mechanic told me that the main board needs to be replaced. That's somewhere in the area of $700 part. I don't really know what the price is because Carrier doesn't know what the price is going to be. They're not going to know the price until they get some in stock. It's on a national back order. They said it's probably going to be somewhere in the area of like $750 or more because they jack up the price every time they get some in stock because they're so rare. So I need to replace the main board. That's like $750 plus, $200 or $300 to get it installed. Let's just round that up to a nice even $1,000 to get the main board replaced. And I also think the generator's not working properly anymore because I got in there troubleshooting it a week or so ago and I got my voltmeter out and I was checking the voltages coming out of the generator. And initially it was at the proper voltage, but messing around with some stuff, it was dropping voltage. So I think maybe the main board might not even be the problem. It might be the generator. So who knows? The generator costs over $2,000 just for the part. So I may need to replace the generator and the main board, and you're talking about, you know, probably somewhere in the area of $3,500 to have both of those replaced. And I still have an oil leak that mechanics cannot figure out. They can't figure out where exactly the leak's coming from. And I have coolant leaks all over the APU. And I have had all of the lines replaced on the APU, and the coolant leaks still persist. And on top of all of that, there's just lots and lots of janky little issues with it. And I'm afraid that even, repairing all of that stuff, the next week, something else could happen with it. That's what that's what's always been going on with the APU is, I dump a whole bunch of money into it. It works for like a week and then something else breaks. I definitely want to have an APU. I really need to have an APU for the fuel savings, number one, and also for just comfort in the truck. Idling the truck, I can't sleep for shit when the truck is idling because the truck shakes like crazy and the idle doesn't stay exactly the same all the time. Sometime, the air compressor will kick on or something and it'll, cause the truck to idle up a little bit, or maybe the fan will kick on to cool the engine off. There's constantly big noise changes in the engine, and the engine's really loud, and it causes the truck to rock back and forth when the engine changes RPMs. And then on top of that, it does a regen about every 12 hours approximately of idle time. It'll do a regen. And when it does a regen, it just jacks up to really high RPMs. And whenever it does that, the engine cranks over really hard, so it jolts the truck really hard. It'll wake you up. And then the engine's super loud for like a half hour. And then when it idles back down, the truck jerks around again. So with all of that jerky movement in the truck and the loud noise and everything, the last week where I was sitting at the truck stop with the truck idling that whole week, not only did I burn like a half a tank of fuel. Yeah, it was about a half a tank of fuel setting from Wednesday to Monday. Not only did I burn 100 gallons of fuel, which is about $320 in fuel for setting not even a week, I also didn't sleep for shit. When I got back home, I was wired on caffeine and stuff, so I couldn't go to sleep right away. But whenever I finally did go to sleep, I slept for like 15 hours. Because I hadn't slept very, very well at the truck stop in the truck. So once the temperature gets cold to where I don't need an air conditioner, then it'll be a lot better because I can run the bunk heater, the S-Bar or Webasto bunk heater, whatever it is that I got, to keep the truck warm. And the APU can just kick on to charge the batteries. But while I need air conditioning, I have to idle the main engine right now because the HVAC doesn't work on the APU. So I'm sitting here thinking, rather than continue dumping money into this APU, is it time for me to cut my losses and just buy a new APU? I think it is. And I'm thinking about going with a green APU. And I'm having a lot of difficulty. I really hate Carrier. I don't like the Carrier dealer in town. I just really cannot stand Carrier. I've looked at the specs on Dynasis or whatever that is. There's a dealer, a Dynasis dealer in Oklahoma City I've never done business with, but I looked at the specs on Dynasis and I don't like it. I hate the design of Carrier. It's a terrible design. The design of having a generator, a 120 volt generator that powers an electric HVAC system, it's a horrible design. And it doesn't put out very much cold air. Back when I was driving for USA Truck and I was a company driver, they had Thermo Kings in some of the trucks, and my truck had a Thermo King in it. That thing was amazing. That thing would put out some cold ass air. It would get that truck ice cold. I loved that thing. That thing was amazing. It did break down on me, and USA Truck didn't want to fix it, so they just turned the idle shutdown off on my truck and just told me to idle my truck. So the last month or two that I had the truck, I didn't have an APU and I just had to idle the damn truck. But that Thermo King was awesome. But I don't want to get a Thermo King for a couple of reasons. Number one, Thermo King's really proud of their shit. They charge the highest prices for everything. It's one of the highest cost APUs. It's not the highest cost. The Cummins APU is the Odan, I forget what it is. The Cummins APU, the Onod or Odan or whatever, the one that you like. If you ever see one of those trucks with the super sleepers on them, you're not going to see somebody that spent $500,000 on a super sleeper truck or $1 million on a super sleeper truck that has a fucking Carrier or Thermo King. Those super sleeper trucks are going to have those Onod. I need to look it up before I just continue butchering this. Cummins APU. I'll put in ONAD, and the search engine will figure out what I'm trying to say. Cummins Comfort Guard APU system. Do they have one that's just Cummins branded? Maybe I'll need to look into that. I didn't know Cummins had their own brand. Let me pause this while I figure this out. Apparently, I need to use a different search engine because this one is not understanding me. Onan, Onan, Cummins Onan. They refer to them as mobile generators. But they are the most expensive and the best APUs that you can get. I'm not willing to fork out the money for one of those. Plus, they're heavier and they take up more room than the Thermo Kings and the Carriers and stuff like that. So, not willing to get one of those. So, Thermo King is an amazing product, but I'm not willing to get a Thermo King because of how expensive they are and how expensive the labor and parts are for them. Carrier is just a terrible design, and they have expensive parts and labor. Dynasis has a terrible design. They're basically the exact same design as Carrier. Dynasis is the exact same design as Carrier, where you have a generator, a belt-driven generator that provides 120 volt electricity to a battery or to an electrical HVAC system. The Thermo King design, which is also what Green APU has, is they have the compressor belt driven off the APU. It doesn't have a generator. That generator is a very expensive part that has a high rate of failure. The belt driven compressors seem, from my experience, they seem to create much colder air than the 120 volt battery HVAC systems. So I'm leaning heavily toward Green APU because of the design, and they're advertised as having just over-the-counter parts. They don't have specialty parts that you have to buy from a dealer. Most of the parts that break, You can just go down to AutoZone and get part replacements. Now, what I'm hesitant about on the green APU is, number one, they have hardly any service centers in the country. There's hardly anywhere to get them worked on. That's issue number one. Issue number two is that the reviews are love them or hate them. There are some extremely negative reviews about green APU. And then there's some like extremely positive reviews for green APU. I don't know who to believe. Like, there's a lot of reviews that say that, I've had this APU for 2 years. It's never worked right. And, I've had it in the shop, a dozen times under warranty, and the people are rude and they don't fix it, and it's a piece of crap. And there are some things that I've seen consistently in reviews about the green APU. One of the things that I've seen consistently in reviews is that it has an issue with overheating. I think that the water pumps that they're using on these APUs are undersized, because a lot of people talk about these things shutting off because the coolant temperature is getting too high. It's getting up to it has a shut off of 215 degrees Fahrenheit. If the coolant temperature gets over 200 or 215 degrees Fahrenheit, it'll just shut the APU off. And a lot of people claim that their APU won't run for more than an hour or two because it'll shut off due to the coolant overheating. And that right there is due to an undersized water pump. So I'm thinking maybe there might be some design issues with green APU. I don't know. I'm really concerned. I need to do a lot more research on it. But if I get out and I run this dedicated run, and I get my, savings built back up to a respectable level, I might go and in a month or two, dump some money on getting a brand new APU, and it might be a green APU. But I need to do a bunch of research on it to figure out if that's what I want. I'm pretty much set that I'm most likely going to replace the APU, because I just don't want to dump. If I felt like I could get my APU working for under $1,000, I would probably still continue dumping money into it. But now I'm in a position where I'm most likely going to need to dump $3,000 to $4,000 into it to get it working again. I'm just like, man, why not just buy a new fucking APU? Stop investing into this thing and just get something new. So that's the position where I'm at right now, is I'm thinking I might just get a new APU. And I'm curious what people have to say about the APU brands, what they've heard, what they've experienced, or whatever. But the only APU brands that I'm aware of are Onan, Thermo King, Carrier, Dynasis, and Green APU. And of all of those, Onan isn't really an option for me because of its size and its weight and just how damn expensive it is. It's an amazing APU, but it's just not really in my ballpark. That's the reason you only typically see those Onans on those massive custom built trucks, because they have room to spare for those big ass generators, and they don't really spare expenses on those trucks. Like, they don't really care about, the APU costing an extra $5,000 to $10,000. So Onan is not really an option. So we're talking about Thermo King, Carrier, Dynasis, and Green APU. And looking at those, I really don't think Thermo King's an option. I really don't think I'm never ever buying another carrier. So, and Dynasis looks like garbage just by the design. And then Green APU on paper, specification wise and design wise, looks absolutely amazing. The only thing that it really concerns the hell out of me with Green APU are all the negative reviews about it. Like, and there's some consistency on the issues that they're having in the reviews. Like, the overheating issue. So, I don't know. I'll have to do a whole bunch more research on that. But anyway, I am super tired. I've been awake for like almost 20 hours. And I am going to go to bed. Um, I've got, this week, the rest of this week off. And I'm supposed to call the agent on Friday to get my load information. And I'm going to start running loads on Monday. And it's sounds like it's going to be a pretty sweet gig. I'm looking forward to it. Not really looking forward to getting out and running around without an APU, but hey, temperatures should be dropping. You know what? If I continue running this load is staying in the south. This load stays down here in the south. So what I was hoping to do was start running up in the north, and I was hoping that they would get down into some, colder temperatures and I wouldn't have to worry about air conditioning. But if I'm going to be running in the south the whole winter, then I might have issues with keeping the truck at a reasonable temperature the whole damn winter. So, yeah, I just don't know what kind of winter it's going to be this year. The winters have been all over the place. Like a normal winter in Oklahoma is fairly mild. Like average temperatures throughout the winter are probably somewhere in the 50s. If we ever get below freezing, it usually doesn't last for very long. It'll get below freezing for like nothing ever sticks in Oklahoma. Like if we have a winter storm come through, it melts off the next day because it doesn't stay below freezing for long periods of time. It's very rare for us to have like a week straight of below freezing temperatures in Oklahoma. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It does happen, but it's not common. And it's another thing that happens in the winter is we will normally have like 70 plus degree days occasionally throughout the winter. So winters are usually really mild in Oklahoma. However, the last few years that these Arctic blasts where the jet stream dips all the way down to Mexico and it pulls in cold air from the Arctic all the way down through Oklahoma and Texas, that has started to become like normal. The first time that happened, like 3 years ago, when Texas got snowed in and there was accidents everywhere and their power grid went down because of that Arctic weather, snow going all the way down to Mexico, that was like some kind of freak event. Now that is normal. It happens multiple times per winter. And this past winter, Oklahoma was below freezing for several weeks at a time. Like we were consistently at or below freezing temperatures for long periods of time. And I don't remember any like 70 plus degree days in the winter in Oklahoma this past winter. So if we have another really cold winter like we had last year, awesome. I won't have to run my air conditioning this winter. But if we have a normal Oklahoma winter, I'm still going to need to run my air conditioning this winter. So we'll just have to see. But hopefully this dedicated run works out and I'm able to make decent money on it consistently for a long period of time. If I'm able to make, let's just go on the low end of like $2,500 a week after all expenses. That's 10 grand a month after all expenses. Um, if I'm able to do that for 3 or 4 months, 40,000. Yeah, I have my own personal expenses that I need to pay for, but I could pocket a large chunk of that. My personal expenses at home probably somewhere in the area of like $3,000 a month, two to $3,000 a month, depending on like how much food I get and stuff like that. Actually, my car, this is my final car payment that I'm about to make, so that'll be $500 a month that I don't have a bill on. I'm making my final car payment on my next car payment, I believe, is the final one, and my car will be paid off. So yeah, that drops it by $500 a month. And I could drop the insurance down to liability now if I wanted to. That'd save me quite a bit of money because my car insurance has basically doubled in the last couple of years. When I first bought the car, my insurance was like $500 every 6 months. And I bought the car in 2019. Yeah, I think I bought it in 2019. And now it's $1,000 every 6 months. Basically doubled. So yeah, I could drop that down to liability and cut my bills even more. But yeah, if I get out here, even the minimum amount that the load pays, $10,000 a month after expenses. That's not gross. That's after expenses. So $2,500 a week. What is that? If I worked like a normal person and worked Monday through Friday and took weekends off, which is what this dedicated run is, that would be $130,000 net to me per year after expenses. $130,000. It would be gross. We'll say 4,000 times 52, $208,000 a year. Yeah, right around $200,000 a year gross, $130,000 a year net after all expenses. I got some bruising. I don't know what I did to get that bruising right there. I think it was when I was working on the APU. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was when I was working on the APU because I was checking a fuse that was way back at the back, and the APU and the truck used the same coolant. The truck had been running like for 3 days straight, so the coolant temperature was really hot, so the APU was really hot, and I was leaning over it to check a fuse at the very back, pull it out and check it and put it back in. And I think that's where I got these bruises up and down my arm trying to get in there, and I touched the top of the APU and burn the hell out of myself. Lots of fun. But anyway, I should wrap up this video because I'm just going to keep rambling and rambling and rambling. Yeah, lots of drama today. I'm glad that it's hopefully over with. I won't know for 100% certain that it's over with until I get reimbursed on my settlement. So we'll wait until the settlement to see what happens. But yeah, it's a range of emotions today, dealing with the customer refusing to pay. Hopefully that's resolved. And then I'm really excited about this dedicated run that I'm on, and it sounds like it could be a permanent thing. Like it could, this could last for a really long time. So we'll see how it goes. And I'm not gonna call trailer utilization yet, because if I call trailer utilization right now and tell them that I don't need the trailer and somebody can come pick it up, they're going to send somebody over to pick up the trailer, which means that I'm going to have to drive over there and disconnect from it. I don't want to drive over there and disconnect from it right now. So what I'll do is Monday, whenever I go over there and start running the load and I'm disconnected from the trailer, I'll contact trailer utilization and let them know that I'm not using the trailer and somebody else can take it. So yeah, I'm gonna go take a quick shower and hop in bed. I need to get this sweat off of me because sitting there pacing around for 4 hours, sweating like crazy. Need to rinse that off before I crawl into bed. So I hope you're having a good one out there. There's a whole bunch of things that I did not talk about in the video. Maybe we'll have another video. We'll see if I'm in the mood to make another one tomorrow or something. But there's just a tremendous amount of things going on right now in the world with the economy, inflation, interest rates, freight volume, truck capacity, geopolitics. It's just absolutely crazy, all the things that are going on. As far as the freight market goes, I don't see any end in sight to the bad freight rates. We might, maybe, see a spike up in rates in certain markets leading up to the UPS strike and during the UPS strike, because people are going to be trying to move their freight with other carriers. Even before UPS goes on strike, people are already diverting freight away from UPS. They don't want their freight stuck at a UPS facility when the strike starts. So they're already diverting freight away from UPS leading up to the strike. Yellow Roadway, I think they're just known. They're not YRC anymore. I think they're just Yellow now. I don't know. They're a whole bunch of different companies rolled into one, but I think they just go under the Yellow brand name. It is a poorly managed company that's been on the verge of bankruptcy for like 20 years. And the really bad freight market is really, really, really breaking the back of Yellow right now. The last I heard was, a few weeks ago, Yellow said that they were going to be out of money. They were going to be basically bankrupt in a couple of weeks if the union didn't work with them. And whenever they made that statement, their creditors came out and said, hey, well, don't file bankruptcy on us. We'll ease up some of your payment terms to try to help you out with some stipulations that you take on a financial manager to help you, get your finances in order. And the Teamsters said that they were not going to budge on their contract negotiations. The Yellow is trying to get, they're trying to restructure. They're trying to basically shut down a bunch of terminals and lay a bunch of drivers off to save money. And the union will not allow them to do it. The union won't agree to it. And that's what was going on. But the last I heard is that the union has actually caved. And they caved big. I heard a rumor, and this is still just rumor. This was like leaked information that I think it was Mother Trucker, the Asian My Show, leaked this out, that somebody in one of the closed meetings negotiations leaked out that the Teamsters agreed to concessions with Yellow to give up their pension and their medical benefits. That is, like, if that's true, which it's still rumor at this point, if that's true, that is massive. Giving up your pension and your medical benefits? Wow. If that's true, then the Teamsters realized that Yellow was about to go out of business and everyone was going to lose their jobs in the short term if they didn't do something drastic. Like I think if that's true, then there was compelling evidence shown of how bad the financial situation was at Yellow. Yellow is a company that just needs to go out of business. They are $1.5 billion in debt. They're not profitable, and they're just a poorly managed company. They need to go out of business. That's just what needs to happen. And then, the UPS strike is most likely going to start on August 1st unless some dramatic thing happens with negotiations. And UPS is one of the largest trucking companies in the world. To put it into some kind of perspective on people that don't know how big UPS and FedEx are, people think that companies like Knight and Swift and Landstar are like the biggest trucking companies in the country. They're not even close. The LTLs are the biggest trucking companies in the United States. Landstar has around 10,000 trucks. Knight Swift, I'm not sure exactly how many trucks they have, and then you'd have to consider all of the sub companies that they have and stuff like that. But I think Knight Swift has somewhere in the ballpark of 30,000 trucks, somewhere in that area. UPS has 112,000 trucks. They are several times larger than, the largest trucking companies in the country. So having them go on strike, that's a lot of freight that gets diverted. In another thing to take into consideration is that UPS is extremely efficient. Extremely efficient. Like, UPS is OCD on efficiency. Every single thing, every business decision that they make is based on efficiency. So UPS taking 112,000 trucks out of the industry because of how efficiently they run, that's like taking 200 something thousand trucks off the road. Like it's not a one-to-one comparison. You can't have a one-to-one replacement for how efficiently UPS moves freight. You can't have 112,000 trucks come in and be a one-to-one replacement. You're probably going to have 200,000 or 300,000 trucks to move the same number of packages that UPS is moving because they are just insanely efficient. Like it's just ridiculous. You can go watch documentaries on the ridiculous efficiency of UPS, and they track everything, and they have tons and tons and tons of stupid little rules that all of their drivers have to follow because of efficiency. Like it saves 15 seconds, it saves 10 seconds. So anyway, yeah, if UPS goes on strike, it's going to be impactful. It's going to have a big impact on the logistics in this country. It's not something that's just going to be easily picked up by other trucking companies and stuff like that. It's the way our supply chains work, it's really hard to just switch things around. Everything's just kind of set up to work a certain way, and when something doesn't work in that chain, it doesn't easily shift over. It's not like a stream that just shifts over to here whenever this gets blocked. It gets stalled and backed up, and it has to reorganize, and it has to figure out some new way to do it, and it's not a very good it's not a very redundant system. it's not a system that's built well on diverting freight. So I expect there to be a lot of issues. The rates might go up in some areas. There might be some spikes in rates while UPS is on strike, and a week or two prior to UPS going on strike, we might start seeing rates going up in some areas. I've already started to see, like, some of the load alerts I've been getting today have been like some decent loads. I'm like, damn, if I didn't have a load, this dedicated run already scheduled, then there are some other loads that I could have gotten today. I've seen quite a few $3+ a mile loads, and they might continue climbing. This, I don't know how long the UPS strike might last, but it could cause, a decent little bump in rates for a few weeks, maybe even a few months. I don't know how long it'll go on. I honestly, really, I think that it's not going to come to a strike. I think there's going to be some agreement before, and a strike's not even going to happen. And if a strike does happen, I don't think it's going to last very long. But we'll see. We'll see. UPS has already started losing customers because FedEx is being an asshole about it. And I don't think it's just FedEx. I think, all of UPS's competitors are doing this shit. People that are switching out of UPS to avoid the strike and they're moving over to carriers like FedEx to get their packages moved through them during the strike. FedEx is making them sign multi-year agreements in order for FedEx to agree to take on their business. So a lot of these customers that are moving away from UPS to avoid the strike, they're not going back to UPS for years. So the longer these negotiations take, the more customers UPS is losing for a long time, maybe forever. So I don't know. I would suspect that UPS, negotiators are fairly desperate to get these negotiations over with before they lose too much business. So I don't know. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's not just UPS. It's not just Yellow. I could talk for hours. But anyway, I'm starting to drivel and I'm having a hard time concentrating because how tired I am. So anyway, hope you're having a good one. Good luck to you out there. It's a terrible freight market. It's not getting better anytime soon. If you're hanging on by your fingernails, thinking that the rates are going to spike up this, holiday season, you're just going to build up more debt and go bankrupt anyway. You need to start making some kind of exit strategy. So good luck out there. I hope you have a good business plan. I really hope that the good owner operators and the good companies in this industry survive this. And the chaff, good riddance. I wish them the best of luck in whatever profession that they, choose after leaving the trucking industry. But we need to get rid of a lot of trucks to stabilize these rates. Anyway, good luck. Have a good one. Bye.